Yeah, you as well. I'm gonna go back and watch some speedruns.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lat Mackey, and this is Sequence Break, episode 36, KingDime. Here it is, KingDime. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing fantastic. Just being busy all week watching games done quick. I've just found that I've been at the events so much in the past few years, and if you know anything about actually going down, you just don't end up watching as many runs as you think.
It's nice to actually watch some runs, isn't it?
Exactly. You just kind of get to chill out at home and see everything you've been missing for years on end.
I don't know if you have this experience, but if you actually have a run in GDQ, like you're either practicing, grinding, or hanging out with people who are, into the games as well. There's not as much time to watch the runs as there is for everything else that's going on during that time.
Absolutely. Last year was busy because I got like 2 submissions in for AGDQ and 2 for SGDQ. So I was literally like sleeping in the practice room, just practice. So you get to meet like all your practice room friends, and then every once in a while I'll kind of come out into the real GDQ world and say hi.
That's one thing I will say. There is rarely a time where there isn't people in the practice room grinding something or playing Pringles or whatever. There always that room doesn't seem to sleep at all, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's I don't know. There's like a balance to it, is trying to figure out how much do you really want to practice there at the event. Because I almost feel like you can overdo it too.
Yeah.
So at the hotel at AGDQ 2020 down in Orlando, Florida, is in the outside area, there was this fire that was burning, I think 24/7, or at least at the nighttime.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so an hour or two before the run, me and my commentator, Mythical 9, we just go outside and we just chill by the fire for like 45 minutes. We're going to relax and go do our best.
It was surprisingly quiet, or calm, I should say, except for maybe one of the nights, Friday night, when the hang was happening. But I agree with you. It was really nice and calming out there. So first of all, thanks for doing this. And I am, I wasn't too familiar with your speedrunning until I think I was actually running a volunteer shift while you were running, and it was either at SGDQ or AG 18 or 19, somewhere around that time period. But I remember you just absolutely destroying games that I grew up with and love so very much, and it's it's kind of one of the reasons I'm really interested to talk with you, because one of the things I don't do enough in my own gaming today is some of the classic PC games, and obviously a big part of that, Doom, Starcraft, those type of games. And so it's really cool and really nice to see that there's you, but there's also this community around these games, and so I appreciate you taking the time and give it. And so we're going to be chatting some classic Doom and some other things today, which is really kind of cool around kind of some of the classic PC gaming and stuff. Let's go way back. First of all, when did you get started in gaming? What were kind of some of the first games you played as a kid?
I'm just thinking all the way back, but my parents had bought us a Sega Genesis, and we also always had a PC, so I was able to do PC gaming from like a very young age. But on the Genesis, the only games that my dad ever did was like the Madden 1995 like football game.
Yeah.
And we had because I'm Canadian, so like NHL 1995.
Got it right.
Yeah, which is actually a fantastic NHL game if you go back in the day. What else was on Sega Genesis? We had the classics like Sonic 2, Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Nice.
An absolutely awful game block. Batman, I think it was Batman Returns. And when you're like 5 or 6 years old, I find you don't really care about game quality as much. You're just happy to be playing games, kind of go out there and do that. And then later on, I kind of determined that nobody likes Batman Returns. Apparently I did.
I don't remember that game at all. I mean, there's some really good, some good NES and Super Nintendo Batman games, but of course, Genesis getting pooped on there with the
Yeah, we didn't get the Batman games.
Oh man, what a bummer. Well, okay, interesting. So there is some platforming in your past. When did the PC come about? If there was one in childhood, was there any PC gaming done in childhood or as a kid?
I was like balancing both at the same time. So as like this was going on with, say, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, and Knuckles, is on PC. It was all about my brother because my brother's 5 years older than myself. So he kind of made the choices of what games to get and so on. So we ended up having Commander Keen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Commander Keen, we had one, two, three, four, and I think there was like a shareware for six that we owned. The Doom one, the shareware, like everybody had played like knee deep in the dead. And then my brother took advantage of his friends and then borrowed the additional floppy disks so that we could play episodes 2, episodes 3. There was Doom 2, and a game that sounds very similar to Doom 2, but Dune 2. So that's an old 1992 RTS by Westwood Studios.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of designated as like the first official RTS, but you had these sandworms in game, and you would be sending your armies all across, the sand, the dunes, and you would just lose your tanks, your devastators, just everything, because the sandworm would eat them all, just be gone. So it was very frustrating.
Sounds like it. I just actually started reading the original Dune novel, the first one in the series, and I'm interested to jump into some of the classic Dune gaming because I've actually heard pretty good reviews of some of those, especially Dune 2, and kind of some of the things it pioneered or did maybe before some of the other games ever did actually. So.
Yeah, you need to kind of watch your hands though when you're playing Dune 2 because it's such an old interface that you don't really have control groups at that time. So you're individually pressing every single unit like one by one, and you're doing like a move or an attack command. But I think you can find mods out there where you can get the control groups. But speaking of the Dune book, I have that on my shelf and I haven't read it yet.
Oh no! Well,
I haven't got there.
Apparently, a new Dune movie is coming out, and I haven't seen the original myself. But I got to tell you, as a novel, it's super interesting world they're creating and everything like that. Commander Keen, that's so true. That is such a classic game, and I haven't had a chance to revisit it as an adult. And I'm curious if I still have the same nostalgia for it if I when I return to it as an adult, because I remember those games just so well. Like such a big part of growing up was Commander Keen.
Yeah, I'd say like 1 through 3 maybe haven't aged as well, but I would like highly recommend Commander Keen 4.
Okay.
It's like a legendary game, but a cool little factoid about that one is like id Software back in the day, like their first intentions was not really to make a Commander Keen game, but they wanted to do like a port for Super Mario Bros. 1 and bring it to the PC.
Right.
Yeah.
So weird. You can kind of see. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I don't know. As platformers, it's the genre, it's the style of game and everything. But I really enjoyed like the art style. I'm glad they went a different direction with it because I think we got it seems like unique characters in a unique game.
Yeah, you get your own little world that you get to play with on PC. And then instead of just like a port of Super Mario Bros., like absolutely Super Mario Bros. Just broke everything open, like amazingly popular title, but Commander Keen's cool too, gotta say.
Absolutely. And then, so as a kid, as you're playing these games, are you the type of gamer that was beating these games, completing them? I'm always curious, like how somebody starts out and then ends up speedrunning at some point at these really high levels. So were you breaking games back then, or were you just enjoying playing? Like what's kind of your approach even as a kid?
My approach as a kid, I think Doom would be a good example for this, but I cheated. Use all the cheats in the game. I would use IDDQD, IDKFA, just get all the weapons, just transition between levels. I wasn't breaking stuff. I was just pure enjoyment, having fun, and I don't cheat as much anymore. But like every time I would turn it on, just like, oh, invincibility, let's go.
It's funny you say that because you're just triggering something in my head, and I'm wondering if you had this experience at all. Doom was probably the first game that I ever like clipped in, like on purpose, because there was a code for it, and I just remember thinking about, wow, there's this whole out of bounds world in this game, and obviously very easy to soft lock it. At least if I remember correctly. I wonder if that might be my first time ever like breaking, quote unquote, even though you just punch in a code to the game. I wonder if you had that experience at all.
Yeah, well, you'd go outside, like the sectors, and then you probably remember the Hall of Mirrors
Right.
effect, where you can see all the colors.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's really trippy. It's just like going into a Picasso image.
Yeah, no kidding. How cool! Thanks for bringing that up. That's super interesting to consider. But it's fun cheating. Zillow says in the
Oh,
chat.
it's incredibly fun
That's the
until
reason we
it's in
did it.
multiplayer.
Yeah, yeah, except for multiplayer, correct. I haven't even thought. I mean, is there a way to? Were there any cheat codes put into Doom Eternal or even Doom 16? I'm curious if they did in the modern games. There was still.
So Doom Eternal, there's secrets that they
Okay.
show on the map. So what they've done through cheats is rather than making it so you have to beat the game and it unlocks all the cheats, or you can just do them at the beginning, is you find little, I think it's little floppy disks
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's reminding me now. Because that was, I mean, that's some, it's funny you mentioned it because, like, man, that was such a big part of playing Doom as a kid was God mode or getting all the weapons or whatever, just by punching in some things on your keyboard. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, you got like visual feedback too for the
right.
cheats. Is you put in the invincibility code. It's not just that you're invincible, but you're the little uh, Doom guy faces. You
Yeah.
get the gold eyes.
Totally. It looks really cool. Nice. I mean, so it's built into the game type of thing. Is it really? Well, it is cheating, but I mean, would it really be cheating if it's built into the game? But yes, it still is. Okay, cool. So awesome. So this is great to see. I'm curious when you first then discover speedrunning or find out, because I guess one of the things that's been kind of going like a theme throughout the podcast is that a lot of people's speedrunning is through platformers and maybe the RPGs nowadays as they're getting, thankfully they've been popularized and things like that, but it's through Mario 64, it's through Zelda, it's through these very popular platformer or action adventure RPG type games. I'm curious what your experience was and how you discovered speedrunning.
Early in the YouTube days, do you remember offhand like when YouTube first like came out?
Yeah, it's late it's maybe 2007, 2008. I always kind of tie it around to the time of the iPhone, but I'm not 100%. I think it was that around that time period, maybe a little bit earlier. I could be totally wrong on that.
Yeah, it's just such a long
Oh,
time
Nauseam,
ago now
2005. There
that
we go. Thank you, Nauseam.
2005.
Okay.
15 years ago, geez.
Yeah, right. Wow.
But back then there was some speed runs that were going up on YouTube. So I've got like a few initial memories for it, at least on figuring out what exactly speedrunning was, just as an activity. And so in like the Doom world, a couple videos that I had come across were by runners STX Vile and Henning Skogsto. And these were sub 30-minute Nightmare Doom 2 times. Because you got to recall, as like a very old community, is that Doom speedrunning was pretty advanced as far as 2005, because they already had like just really competitive communities going on. And then the weird one that tripped me up was tool assisted runs, because I didn't distinguish them. Initially it's just, this is the speed run, right? This guy's crazy. I don't know how he's doing all this, just rocket jumping off every wall.
Yeah.
But the Doom 2 task was by Rambo Bones, and it was like Doom 2 in 14 minutes, and this one was made in 2006.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that's awesome. There was already this community around happening at that time, even though we didn't have the tools to share these things easily.
Yeah. But you spoke about Mario and Zelda, and I'm no different. Is there was big Mario runs
Right.
back then. A famous task by Morimoto.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That comes up a lot in almost everyone's history.
Yeah. So watch that. Just mind blown by all the tricks. I think he was like going behind walls and
Yeah, it was crazy.
level 1 or level 2. And let's see, early days. Andrew G.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
The 5 minutes, 4:59, etc.
I always refer to him as a legend because he comes up quite a bit too. Because he was, you could see his videos. They were available on the internet. They were out there. He was doing it. I just was remembering this as well. I'm curious, before you had got into the speedruns or even watched any or decided to do some on your own, had you, one of the great things about Doom and Doom 2 and all that was there, even to this day, there are still many mods you could apply to it. You can really break the game wide open and make it completely unrecognizable if you want to. And I'm curious if you had experimented with any of that beforehand or anything like that before you speedrun.
Yeah, I did do the mods before I speedran, and that ties into StarCraft because StarCraft 2 was 2010 when that one was released by Blizzard.
It's 10 years
But
old
I
already.
had yeah, I know it's a decade.
That's crazy.
We had it was like a Discord channel, and we're asking each other about like the games of the decade for 2010 to 2020. It's just like, oh, StarCraft was 2010. It's like I almost want to include that in there.
Yeah, how
It was
could you
such a
not?
great game.
Right?
But I had a Terran practice partner because I played thousands and thousands of multiplayer games in StarCraft before I truly got into speedrunning. And my Terran practice partner, who had a online tag of Knight of Knee, mentioned about Doom mods. This Doom mod called Scythe.wad, and .wad just stands for like where's all the data
Yeah, right.
when you're implementing it. And so I went and downloaded a source port called ZDoom, and then downloaded the WAD, and then I tried that out, and I was hooked like ever since 2011, 2012 in the community.
Oh, nice. And so when do you consider, like, when did you first attempt a speed run of whether it was, and was it classic Doom or was it the first, which game was it actually?
No, it was a much worse game.
I'm excited. Which one is this?
My very first speedrun was Sonic 4, episode 1.
I was not expecting that at all. Wow. Why'd you choose that one?
Ended up buying it, I think, for the Wii console. And there was a bunch of leaderboards. I think whenever you would finish up levels and you could see the leaderboards like directly in front of you, and that just was like motivation for competition. So ended up trying some of the boss levels, doing some boss rushes, and there was a GDQ speedrunner at the very top of the leaderboards back then, Peroxide. Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar. I've almost, Sonic 4 is almost the forgotten Sonic to me quite often because I didn't have a Wii when it came out. So, it's like, what a cool way to have a leaderboard built in. So you didn't have to go, there wasn't speedrun.com at the time. So you could, maybe use SDA or something like that. But wow, that's crazy.
Exactly. It was built into the game. So you didn't have to do like outer research and then just, oh, well, here's a 57. Let's see if we can beat it.
Yeah.
We got a little higher on the leaderboard. Okay, let's try to beat a 55.
Dog Developer in the chat. Sonic 4 is forgotten to everyone. I hate to say it like that, but it is kind of, I didn't even realize that anybody had ever run it at a GDQ. I've never done any research on that, so that's crazy. Well, okay, so...
Sorry.
No,
sorry
go,
for
please,
interrupting.
you go.
I don't know if Peroxide ever ran that, but he ran... I think he was like the very first Sonic Generations run in like a GDQ. But he like speed ran Sonic 4. But I kind of doubt that he did it at Games Done Quick.
Got it. So what is it about that hooked you into the speedrunning thing? Or was it maybe there's something that wasn't that, what is it? I'm curious.
I mean, Sonic's just extremely fast. It's very satisfying to play, as though Sonic 4 might have got hammered on by the critics. If you're going fast in the game, doesn't really matter. And like we have awful blocks in marathons, right? It doesn't have to be like a top tier game for the speedrun to be entertaining or enjoyable.
I totally agree. I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I totally agree with you on the Sonic thing too. I didn't run it for very long, but I picked up Sonic 2 speedrun for a little bit. And I'm glad that there's communities around those games because they are incredibly fun. They're incredibly challenging. But if you enjoy speed at all, man, Sonic game hooks you pretty easily. So so when do you decide to pick up any sort of PC game to speedrun it? Like how does that happen?
PC game? Well, that was through Games Done Quick.
Okay.
Because so StarCraft community was probably the biggest esport on Twitch through like the earliest of days. I think everybody remembers watching, casting by Tastosis, Day 9, In Control, et cetera, et cetera. And around January, when GDQ was going in one of the earlier events, I can't recall if it was 2011 or 2012, but it was like very early that I'd watched this. And I would have been in university doing my bachelor's of science at the time, and I probably got very distracted and wasted the whole week watching GDQ until like 2, 3 a.m. every night.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I think might have been one of the most surprising things about seeing a speedrun of Starcraft, was that my familiarity was very much the competitive esports scene, which is still to this day still thriving. Like, there is still a very competitive Starcraft scene, and so it's interesting to see somebody speedrunning it, and then there's actually other people who are speedrunning it. That Games Done Quick, thankfully, was the one who introduced me to that as well, because I wouldn't have even like. It's how do you speedrun a game like this? Just in my brain, it wouldn't even have clicked, because it's so competitive and it's so. And on the flip side of that, it's fast. Like, that's one of the things I'm blown away every time I watch any sort of competition with StarCraft, is how quickly people are able to do things, and that's part of. I know that's part of the strategy when you're playing competitively. So.
Yeah, the multitasking is out of control, but like StarCraft was more nerve-wracking to speedrun than like every single other Doom run I've done in an event, because of the multiplayer scene. I never really wanted to put in the game, because the thing is, like, objectively, I'm not the best StarCraft player. The competitive scene is, in South Korea, like having team houses,
full-time
like
job.
Everything. Yeah, full-time, like, professional players.
Yes.
And so it's just like, how can you really do this at a GDQ? But if you're doing your routing, you have your build orders, etc., you can still make it good for an audience. It's just that I'm not a 300, 400 APM player with like that tier of mechanics, and I never will. So it was like, do you submit this?
Right. I'm glad you did, because I remember watching it, and one of the things that still blows me away today is how the keyboard is like an instrument as part of that run, and the mouse movement as well. But I just remember fingers flying around and everything, and just it looked so incredibly challenging. And just to see how you do what you did, and this lasts for like an hour. Isn't the run like over an hour long or something like that? It's kind of crazy.
Well, it was the Protoss campaign in Brood War, so a little bit under an hour. I think the GDQ run was like 50 to 55 minutes. If you added together like all the campaigns, I'd expect like 7 hours.
Wow. Are there runs of all the campaigns together?
Yes.
Wow.
So if you go check out on SDA in the StarCraft community page, there was a player called Freezer who had like all of the ILs for like every single one of the maps. He just busted it all open, and I used like his videos and his strategies to set up for that run.
That's so cool. If we don't mind digging a little deeper, what were some of the things you discovered as you started speedrunning the game? And did it improve? I mean, would you still play multiplayer games at all? Like, do those things exist at the same time when you're learning a speedrun like that?
Yeah, you were doing like just multiplayer for mechanics practice.
Okay.
Just to do that. So with Brood War versus StarCraft 2, Brood War's hotkeys are all over the place. So if you're playing Protoss, your hotkey for probes are in StarCraft 2, it would start out as E, which is a pretty good position on the keyboard. But in Brood War, it's like P.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the hotkeys are all over. So like you just got to grind that out until it's all muscle memory for hotkeys.
At this, I mean, I assume you can, but at this point, I mean, do you have any? Let's talk about the hardware a little bit then. So when we're speedrunning like a game like that, are you just playing on a normal like gaming keyboard, or have you done any modification or anything like that might help out feel where some of those buttons are, or anything like that?
No, it's a mechanical keyboard right now. I've got the it's like Corsair with silent cherry red switches.
Okay, might have the same exact keyboard.
But running an RTS it's not like modifications to the keyboard that you need to do, but you just need to know like all of the tools that you can use in game. So I was explaining in like map 2 in at least in StarCraft, you start out with a mini map. Because I've been playing some Command and Conquer Remastered, and you have to build a communication center to get a mini map. But on your mini map, so instead of like scrolling down, you know how you scroll on a screen and you can scroll vertically or horizontally, that's generally like a really bad habit. You don't want to do that in RTS because you can go faster by clicking areas on your mini map in the bottom left by just sending your screen there. So that's like tool number 1. You do not want to scroll. Number 2 is like hotkeys and control groups. So maybe doing a control group for buildings, like your main command center, your nexus, having one on gateways, your robotics facility, your higher tech. You would have hotkeys for your army. So like groups of zealots and dragoons, and have that all set up. But then your third tool is camera hotkeys, which is by holding control, I think it's like control F3, control F4, for example, is you could have a camera hotkey on where the rally points of your army are going to. So if you just pressed F3, it would go to that part immediately on the minimap. Maybe F4 would be at your natural base, which would be like your second base. So you have your command center, and then you would go expand to your natural for more resources.
You mentioned it briefly, and I'm curious if you can still do this. I've been recently playing through the Command and Conquer remaster as well. Really enjoying it. Yes. It's super fun. If it's got the nostalgia thing perfect, but then it's got some really great improvements. But you mentioned that I've been watching your stream, and I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not, but it looks like you've already started to speedrun or at least play the game at a little bit higher level. And I'm curious, after speedrunning a game like StarCraft, can you still enjoy the casual experience, or are you jumping right into figuring out how to, pull the game apart and learning, moving the game along faster than you might normally?
I have to enjoy the experience of a game before I have really any interest in speedrunning. But I'm always amazed, looking around at just how fast games are broken now.
Right? 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm playing, say, Doom Eternal, for example, on Nightmare difficulty, just having fun, 3-4 days getting through the campaign, and then you just go and find the community Discord, and it's just like, oh, we're out of bounds here, and we're flying over the map, and we're doing ballista boosting, and the record's 2 hours.
Yeah, insane. I think that speaks to thankfully the how we've seen growth in the speedrunning community in a lot of the niches too. I can vouch for this in my own community. I play TurboGrafx 16 games, and I only started 2 or 3 years ago, there was 5 of us, and now because of things like Games Done Quick and other places, there's more people into the speedrunning thing. And on the flip side of that, you're like, oh man, this gets competitive real quick. But on the other side of that, man, we get to do some really cool, we find things so much faster nowadays because there are other people doing it.
Yeah. I'll have to check out some of those runs. You'll have to give me some links. I'm very interested in TurboGrafx 16 runs.
It's a niche of a niche, as you can kind of understand, right? But that's speedrunning in a nutshell. Is that there's this bigger speedrunning community, and then there's all these small communities that exist within the speedrun, which has actually been one of the fun of doing the podcast here, is that getting to sample all of these. And I'm curious, what's it like, tell me a little bit about, let's start with StarCraft. Tell me a little bit about the StarCraft speedrunning community, and is there any crossover between the competitive scene of that, or is it mostly just the speedrunner people who are into it?
Well, there is some RTS discords or there's a main one, a real-time strategy Discord, where it's kind of separated into all of the individual games, Age of Empires, Command & Conquer, Rise of Nations,
nice,
etc. But StarCraft's a weird one because I'd say the competitive scene is very much the priority. So speedrunning was more of a niche that
sure,
the wider community just didn't really know about. But there'd be, some strong players that would say, I'd say usually they'd finish up with multiplayer. You'd be done, and then you transition over to speedrunning because maybe you learned about this, this new activity. So there was Freezer, as we mentioned in Brood War, but there was like multiple runs by Railcoon.
Oh, really?
He did StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty in AGDQ 2013.
Cool.
And that was directly how I started speedrunning, is I was watching this run, and then probably a month or two after that is I started speedrunning Wings of Liberty. And that answers your question of how I got to the PC gaming after Sonic 4.
Right.
Greatest game ever.
It's just such a, I was not expecting that answer at all. That's so cool. It was Railcon. I think Railcon was just, he does a lot of volunteering stuff behind the scenes at GDQ, and I didn't realize that he was a StarCraft speedrunner. How cool.
Well, Railcoon was a caster. He was like a shoutcaster in, I don't know how long he went for, but I know like beta days of StarCraft 2 is you can go find videos of him casting StarCraft games.
How cool. Well, that's really cool. And I'm curious if it's this way in RTS and things like that, but on the platforming side of things, we tend to share all the time. In fact, one of the things I love about this community is how well we help each other out. We share, we can help diagnose problems others are having and everything. And I'm curious if that kind of camaraderie, but also, collaboration happens in the RTS community as well for speedrunning.
Oh yeah. I think it's gotten like better over the years. Is like if you go to speedrun.com and you go down, the sideboard, you can find where do you find the community? Here's a list of tricks in that. But I think it's even if you can't find it in those initial places, just being able to find those who are knowledgeable, like, oh, you can go to Speed Demos Archive, you can find this page, it'll have all the explanations. If you then go talk to KingDime, he'll tell you to go to Team Liquid and go check Liquipedia, which has further explanations, and then a new player can get started and use all these sources.
Zillow says Dime's StarCraft 2 splits are probably collecting dust at this point. Probably should fix that at some point. It's an intense speed run. If you've ever watched, I can't imagine grinding that because of how it looks stressful. I'm not gonna lie. When I've watched you play it, it looks stressful.
Yeah, like I just think like backup strats don't tend to be like a 15-second loss. It's just like if you don't have your Marine and your Marauders at this point, or you don't have enough, you just die.
And that's a red killer, folks, in case you're wondering. Just dying is not good.
Yeah. In the screenshot that you posted on the Twitter for this was on Countdown with all of the cannons, but it was like set up that we are going to save at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 15 minutes. But you don't just want to keep saving and doing safety saves.
Right.
Because if you don't have the gear and the units to combat the aggression from the enemy AI, you've soft locked yourself.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because as a kid, I never figured that out. I really didn't start doing those kind of multiple saves until I was an adult. And I'm like, why? It seems so simple, but why the hell wouldn't I do this as a kid? I guess I didn't have the brain capacity to do so. But man, that has become a game changer, making multiple saves while playing a game.
Yeah, safety save 1, safety save 2. Check out the Doom speed runs, and it's all set up. It's literally AGDQ 2020, and then safety save 1, safety save 2, safety save 3, safety save 4.
Well, speaking of, that's a great way to transition, because I would like to chat a little bit more Doom, because that's definitely where my affinity and love of PC gaming comes from. My first first person shooter probably would have been Wolfenstein 3D, which was very cool and stuff, but Doom just felt like this completely different animal and like this completely different game. The original one, the shareware aspect of it, the fact that you could play, you could get it very easily. Admittedly, it was only the first campaign or the first episode, but it was still just felt like this whole new world, and the engine just felt like everything just felt real and raw about it. And when do you tell us, what are the first runs you do of Doom, and how at this point it seems like you've probably spent a lot of time playing Doom.
First runs, oh boy, we're going back to SGDQ 2012. Maybe it was AGDQ 2013. Actually, thinking back to it, AGDQ 2013 was the big bang of speedrunning.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But before I was doing the majority of the classic Doom runs at GDQ, Kubelwagen had done runs before that, and he was doing like Doom 1 and Doom 2. But Mike Uyama was standing behind Kubelwagen, and at the end of Kubel's run, when he was winding down and doing his outro and going to the next one, Mike Uyama had asked him, "Are you going to do Final Doom for next time?" And Kubelwagen exclaimed, "Oh, no, that's too hard." Of course, in my mind, if we can learn a Final Doom run, this might be a fantastic submission.
Absolutely.
So I submitted Final Doom, the Plutonia experiment, for HDQ 2014.
And I can't remember if the video playing right now is Ultimate or Final, but I included it in here because this is actually from later on. This is, what was that? Oh, I can't remember what year it is. Later on, the one you did in 19 or 18. But it is all of the runs that I've watched that you've done over the GDQ over the years. That's what got me to check out your stream, because it's like they're really... It seems like there's a lot of factors that go into it, but one of the definite things that I think is interesting is you have to have a strong understanding of the mechanics and the fundamentals of the game. I think before, maybe, and this might just my opinion, maybe you could describe or talk about it a little bit more, because it seems like you need a strong understanding of how the game works before you can actually break it apart and start doing some of the crazy glitches and all those kind of things, the clips and things like that.
Yeah, because the speed run is not done on I'm Too Young to Die, and this is like more of a community history kind of continuation. But Doom Classic speedruns are done on ultraviolence. So that means you're facing a lot of head-on opposition. So if you're not really comfortable with UV, you got to put in the time so that you can, be on the same playing field as for speedrunning.
Absolutely. And one of the things I've also noticed too is that because you play on ultraviolence, it's where there's a lot of sprites on, there's a lot of things happening on screen. and I, in any platformer game, quite often especially with classic consoles, we're dealing with trying to reduce lag and things like that. Do some of those strats exist in any of the classic Doom versions? In speedrunning, are you trying to, you try not to lag out whatever you're playing?
Lag strats exist on like the console ports. So if you were to go and do speed runs of like GBA Doom, SNES Doom, the one that plays at like 12 FPS. Yeah. But like all of those, I think there are like lag reduction strats. But like as far as PC, like the TC, it runs so smoothly.
That's okay. I want to ask you about that. Are there any sort of hardware requirements or I should say limitations when running Final Doom? Any of the Ultimate Doom, any of the older Doom versions, Doom 2?
God, now we're getting into a whole new topic, because the community is weird. So emulators in like other communities, I think emulators are looked down like a little bit. I don't know. That's just like my experience. Sure. Around. There's the runs on official hardware, and then there's emulator runs. Mm-hmm. So I think it's often people want you to play on emulators and then go to official hardware so that to go on the leaderboards, because sometimes like emulator runs are not accepted. Yeah, you probably know this.
First of all, emulators are free, so it's a good way to learn a game. You can most of the time you don't have to purchase all this old crap to learn to run. But yes, typically at the highest levels in the most competitive games, they're wanting you to play on some sort of official hardware to go along with the run. But depending on your community, you might be a-okay with because some of the emulation has gotten really good, actually, interestingly enough, in certain communities and things like that. So yeah. Is there any of that? There's issues in Doom and things like that.
Yeah, because so consoles are a time capsule. So if you buy a console and you're competing against other people, they should all be the same. You might have like a language difference, like a Japanese language, the run is a touch faster. But like if you're playing a PC game, we're not going back to 1993 and we're not playing with 486. You can't really go back to that. So just by having like a modern PC, it's like already different. You're never gonna emulate that,
right?
But the Doom community doesn't really care as much using like a more modern source port. So source port it's just utilizing the source code for Doom that was released in 1997, and then these got created off that. But in my runs, I'm using Crispy Doom, which is like a vanilla-based source port, but it has a little bit of enhancement. So original resolution is 320 by 200. So Crispy lets you go up to 640 by 400. And sorry, just thinking where I was going off with that. And you can uncap the frame rate.
Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Okay. How high will it go up to?
Pretty much whatever you want.
Oh, wow.
But that's just like that's different from what you'd be doing in 93, because the tick rate is 35, which is essentially 35 FPS. Huh. So in using these newer source ports, like we can go a little bit faster on maps. But Doom really more cares about the final product. They don't want a source port where mechanically things are changing.
Sure.
So an example is in a source port called GZ Doom. When an arch file blasts you upwards and blasts you vertically so that you can essentially do a jump, and you were holding like an input against a wall, in vanilla Doom you would go straight up and you'd come straight down, so you couldn't get onto the platform. In GZ Doom, if you hold that input, you can keep the momentum, so it would blast you up and then you would slide on to the platform. Wow. So like GZ Doom speedrunning is frowned upon, but like Crispy Doom, PR Boom, it's all fine. So if it's close to vanilla, but you have some enhancements and the run is cool, we don't care.
I actually don't blame the community for having some of those type of restrictions, because that kind of changes the way the game works. If you can do, like you're mentioning, where like that's one of the things I remember very clearly, and I don't know how to describe it very well, but some of the linearity of your movement, moving left, moving right. We didn't have some of the modern nice conveniences we have nowadays. In fact, when I recently replayed Doom, I think it was last year, I played with just the keyboard because I wanted to really get that experience, what it was like to play as a kid. Literally the key, I was using the arrow keys, which is, oh my gosh, my brain just does not think that way anymore. It's very weird to play it like that.
Yeah. Did you try to dodge projectiles, and you're like turning the left key and then pressing the backwards key, and you're doing a slalom?
Literally the first 45 minutes I was just getting destroyed because of that exact thing. I couldn't avoid any projectiles coming at me. It's like, dang it, this sucks. But then I realized, wait a minute, it's just a different way of thinking about it. Remember back to being 10 years old, and it might help a little bit. So
the pro tip is my brother showed me when I was very young, 5 or 6, is the straight keys, the left and the right arrows that are above Alt.
Oh, dang, of course, right?
Yeah. Pro tip, use straight.
Well, I'll be honest, what ended up, after I beat the first episode, I was like, you know what, because I got it off of GOG, and I was like, there's a mouse and keyboard option. I'm like, let's just try it out. Let's see what it feels like. And it was a lot more, my brain just had a lot more ease with it to play it that way. So, when did you pick up like in as far as speedrunning goes? Did you first start with Doom and then move on to Doom 2, or was that kind of at the same time? Was this working in conjunction? When did you pick up Doom 2 and start running that?
It's like Doom 1. Hmm, that's a good question. I think it was Doom 1, Final Doom the Plutonia experiment, then like more runs into Doom 2, and then finishing off with Final Doom TNT Evolution, because there's two different level sets.
Got it.
Final Doom.
Do any of the things from Final Doom, all the earlier Dooms, carry over when speedrunning Doom 2?
Yes, everything carries over. So to learn Doom 2 is like we would recommend that you start with Doom 1, because there's just more simplicity in like level design, but like all the monsters in Doom 2 are like adds lots of difficulty. So Revenants have homing missiles that hit for like 80 damage. Mancubi with their projectiles that go outwards, like Archviles, and like the Doom 2 tricks tend to be more complicated.
I was going to ask, what makes the Doom 2 speedrun different than this Doom 1? And can you maybe describe a couple of those tricks that might, that are just seem that are a little bit more complicated, as you said?
Well, there's like rocket boosts. We're just going to call them rocket boosts because they don't give you any upwards momentum. We're just trying to go really fast. But like the rocket jump that you do on E2M7 or the spawning pits in Doom 1, there's like a lot of frames of buffer that you get, so it really doesn't have to be like absolutely perfect. Whereas on Dead Simple or map 7, so the map with Mancubi and then Arachnotrons, and there's like a kill trigger at the end where you can just exit. It's like a 1-frame trick. And so doing that with the strafe mechanics and adding that all together and missing your rocket essentially once just ends your run.
Oh, geez.
So the struggle with all of this is that they're single segment runs. They're single segment. So if you die, your run is invalid.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Exactly. Wait. So oh my gosh. So you can't take a death in the run. You have to do it deathless.
You have to do it deathless, or it's not going to go on the leaderboard.
Okay, forgive me, but I'm curious. Maybe I didn't quite understand that. Why is it that way? I'm not quite sure understanding that. Is it? Can you reset settings or things like that in between a death or something? Is there something that prohibits? Because that's an interesting. I don't run any games like that. It's kind of interesting. I'm curious to.
I think it's because like, if you die, you go to a pistol start.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So like nobody wants to continue after a pistol start. It's like, I don't know how to play this game now. I gotta go from.
What am I supposed to do with this thing?
That's a whole different sort of routing. Like actually knowing everything 100% in the level. It's just like you just don't want to die.
That's such a good point. That's so right. Oh my gosh, that sounds awful actually. Having to re-get all your gear back and everything. Holy cow! Especially because the armor is important and all that kind of stuff too to the red. So.
Really true. So maybe you can finish a run single segment, but nobody does it.
Yeah. Plus it might double your time, or whatever. Some ridiculous amount of time would be added because of getting all the gear back and everything like that.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I guess there's so many things that I love about Doom 2. Doom 2, especially, I was just getting a little bit older when Doom 2 came out, and it was one of the first PC games that I actually bought. Or I shouldn't say I bought, my family bought because I was a kid. But like with the shareware version of Doom 1, I never purchased any of the Doom games because there was this shareware version. It was like the craziest thing. But Doom 2 came in a box. We went to a store to buy. It was like a big deal in my house. I'm curious if you had any sort of similar experience or remember picking up Doom 2 as a kid.
Yeah, I recall having that box art of having the Doom guy who's fighting the Cyber Demon who's bearing down on you. I think Doom guy is not using a fantastic weapon choice there. He's like, it's like a rocket launcher or something when the Cyber Demon is close. All of those big boxes, they're just so cool. And if you keep them in good shape, they're like nostalgic. I went to my brother's father-in-law's uh, place, and he has like a whole bunch of those old boxes. It's like Starcraft, Diablo, the old Myst game, Myst,
Yeah, yeah.
the King's. I think it was like King's Quest 5,
Oh man.
and yeah. Whereas all of my big boxes were busted, ripped,
Yeah.
torn. There was like one that survived the Kid Power, which was Baldur's Gate 2, big box.
That's the one. That's the one that made it.
The one that made it because it was a little older.
There's a YouTuber I enjoy, LGR, and he has a huge an unreal collection of just PC big box games. And I gotta tell you, it's kind of nostalgic. It's fun watching, just reminding yourself that there was a time in our lives where we went to the store and you could see all this. A game had to convince us from some of the box art, unless your friend had told you about the game or something. And there's something pretty cool about that there was that part of the experience was considered. How do I get your attention type of thing.
Yeah. And you're learning, like, instead of going on forums and checking that all out today, was within your big box. You had the manual beside you.
The manual.
Looking through it and you're reading it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious. So games like Doom 2, those classic Doom games, do they have a tasking community similar to what we might have in the retro style, retro console community, things like that?
Yes. I haven't looked into the tool assisted runs like quite as much, like I watch them for entertainment, but they weren't on task videos forever.
Oh wow.
And that'd be like a great just source of history to really look into. But they weren't on for a long time, but these days we're using software called X-Ray, XDRE.
Okay.
So you can build your demos. You can build your demos through that. But as far as like discovering tricks, there is like a brute force feature that you can use that it's almost like using an AI to find tricks. It's kind of crazy. You just have Doom guy like doing certain movements and then it'll repeat it hundreds or thousands of times.
Oh my god. So it's, to your point, brute forcing it, just getting it until something interesting. One of the things, do the tools work the same way as it might work for a 2D platformer where you're literally doing inputs one frame at a time? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I'm curious if that's the same way it works for a PC game like that.
Yeah, in the X-ray it'd be like one frame at a time.
Okay.
But I'd say like when you're creating that in those console games, like your end product will always look good. But like there's a very much a distinction in when you're using a 3D game if you're doing like instant turns versus smooth turns. Because instant turns, just the visual quality of the task, it's hard to watch.
Oh yeah.
There's
no
doing
smoothness.
Like automatic. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I'd have to go check it. I didn't even think about looking at that. Like one of the issues I have sometimes when playing 3D games, even Doom to this day, if I'm close up into my monitor, like I can get sick. I get motion sick real easy. So I'm guessing something like that could easily cause some motion sickness or at least some just jarriness like you're mentioning.
Yeah. Well, it's a tool assisted speedrun that is cool for theory. It's
Yes.
cool to watch, but like it's not as useful when you're playing it because everything's impossible.
Right. Yeah, there's just that's a good point. There are a lot of games nowadays where we're working towards what the task is able to do. It literally, I mean, Mario 1's a great example, but I mean, there are so many great examples of like we are getting closer and closer to that. I guess for if you can do things, it's impossible. You can't do that in a real run.
Yeah. Just in terms of movement, like you could probably learn the tricks, do it on this frame and you'll succeed. But just like in anything other than tasks, there was it's like the mid 90s. And it was, I think the first task that came out was like a Doom task.
Oh, cool.
but it was never classified as tasks, but it was using like slowdown and reloads. And it's the silliest thing you've ever seen. But yeah, look up Steven Winterfeld Doom tasks. Because it was seen as cheating, it's we don't think like too highly of it, but that's how it was. I think that was the first time that Doom 2 was ever beaten on Nightmare.
Oh wow.
Was essentially a cheated run, but it's a cheated run using task tools.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it kind of evolved from there.
Right. And you got to start. I mean, you got to start somewhere, or you got to, somebody's got to do something to spark some imagination and everything. So I'm sure that's perhaps what it was used for. Like, hey, we know this probably shouldn't. We should do it this way, but. Yeah. I'm curious. So, you've been playing these games now and running these games and breaking them for quite a while. Do you still discover new strats in any of the classic Dooms and still finding new ways to beat the game to get through the game as fast as possible? Or is the community?
Oh yeah, the community found they found like a new way to get out of bounds, or not like out of bounds, but to go straight through a wall on Phobos Anomaly. So the last level in Knee Deep of the Dead, where you're lowered down and there's a ring of barrels around Pinkies.
Yeah.
And then you get the 2 Barons of Hell. So by using like momentum preservation, where you can hold your momentum and kind of almost like very slightly clip into a wall, and then by going by a certain angle and having speed that's over 32 units a tick, it's just a speed requirement to go straight outside, and then you run around to I think you press the switch. You go up and then you go in the teleporter and you die.
Game over.
So, yeah. And that was just like within the last month or two. So
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Even in Doom, there's new tricks, and you'd think everything would be discovered by now, but no.
And that's what I wanted to get to is like I think it's so cool that there's a reason, by the way, that we keep seeing it, I think, at live events as well, is because there are new things being discovered and there's an interest in seeing these things. And I think that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that there's still people actively trying to break the game and still enjoy running it and things like that. I think that's pretty cool. Shows a lively community. One of my last questions about the Doom stuff, and is there a minimum hardware requirement, or quite often I see people ask, and questions get asked, I'd like to start speedrunning, but I'm concerned about not having the original console or having a PC that's fast enough to play some of these games. Does that barrier to entry exist for Doom? Like, is it one of those things that if I wanted to start speedrunning it, I could just pick it up, or are there some hardware requirements you might recommend?
Well, if you modify your toaster or a calculator, you'd be able to still play Doom. I don't even think you'd need a computer. Find your Tamagotchi. I don't know, just program it in.
At this point, right?
I think any PC you've gotten in the past 25 years, you should be fine.
There you go. When you get up to some of the higher levels of speedrunning, I mean, is it helpful to have a responsive keyboard or mouse or anything like this? Because I have watched some other PC games run at a high level, and like the Mist Runners, like these guys have some pretty nicer mouses so they can get the exact inputs they need and things like that. I'm curious if that exists in the Doom world as well.
I don't think I've seen like special setups, but there are speedrunners who are they still play keyboard only.
God, that's so cool. That's awesome.
So not really a modification, but just like a stuck in the past. Got to still play keyboard only. One of my favorite modifications that I knew myself is Captain Clever ran Wolfenstein 3D at a marathon, and you can get speed through straight running, but you can also get speed through vertical mouse movement. So instead of using a normal mouse, you use like one of the roller wheel mouses that you'd use for ergonomics. So it'd go crazy fast by just spinning the wheel.
God, that's so cool. Those were all the rage, by the way. I don't know, late 90s or whatever they came out and stuff. That was like in the office, you would see those, at people's in office buildings and stuff. Trackball Doom when? Good question, dog developer. That's so cool. Okay, great. So I think that's a super important thing, that if somebody wanted to get into Doom speedrunning and all that kind of stuff, there is no barrier to entry. I mean, CNEY is saying, I'm modding my toaster right now. Why not, right? Doom literally does play. It feels like that's kind of like if you've got anything with a chip in it, can it play Doom? It becomes the first question.
Yeah. I'd say like the biggest barrier though, just going off on a little bit of a tangent,
please,
is actually like trying to do some of this research for Doom is just because just being such an old community is some of the websites like don't really exist anymore. There's like tons of info that was like on Usenet and all of those old features. So like you've got to be like Indiana Jones to go find like the older Doom material.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I've actually run into that myself, in that the speedrun.com is a wonderful resource, and quite often you'll see like a Discord link or something, or even their own message boards there. And so, but one of the things when you visit those Discord links is a lot of material isn't always necessarily put together in a nice, easy place to go find this stuff. And it's especially Doom. I didn't realize that the speedrunning community goes back 20 years, if not more in Doom. So I got to imagine that's quite a bit of information to have out there in disparate places and things.
It's absolutely everywhere, but like that was the amazing part of what SDA really was, is bringing together all these communities so that you put there. But like Doom never really needed SDA, because SDA evolved from Quake runs into kind of like SDA, and then adding new games, because like Radek used to be the administrator there. Right. But like if you did a fork of speedrunning, there's like Doom and then SDA in a sense. So Doom kind of went off on its own path.
Interesting. Dog Developer in the chat is saying Wayback Machine is your friend. I've actually done that a few times now, especially when I first started running the Bonk games, because we had one task by a person who was no longer active in the community, and it was extremely challenging finding any sort of resources if you're trying to break a game or anything. So I got to imagine the same, especially. So that's interesting that Doom did its own thing. But I mean, I was able to research on speedrun.com nowadays. It seems like some of the more modern stuff has gotten in there, and you can find runs and things like that, and people who have done some things. So, which also thankful for people in the community that have done tutorials. And I don't know if there are any in the Doom world. I didn't actually go looking for any of that stuff, but those are super helpful too. YouTube is once again your friend as well.
I think Doom does need like more tutorials. I've done one for Ultimate Doom.
Cool.
Kind of had plans for the other runs, but that'd even be cool if anybody else like went on and took that project too, because it's so helpful. Like my YouTube channel isn't fantastically big, but I'd just go back to this and be, the tutorial video has like 4,000 views. That's pretty cool. It's getting used.
It's absolute. No, it's so thankful. Are you kidding me? That's like a huge service to the community. I will tell you that right away, because I have used many. I used a Sonic 2 tutorial. I used all these different, tutorials to learn the game. And it's hearing a person who plays the game very well talk about how they're doing what they're doing. Oh my gosh. It's invaluable. You can't put a price on it. And it doesn't surprise me that it's a popular video for you, because it's like, this is a lot of people love Doom, and we see your runs, or we see other people running these games at GDQ or whatever. It's like, man, I want to see if I can try that,
So Zero Master has been crushing like world records for Doom for years now. I'd say the big three are like Looper, Elimsky, and Zero Master. But Zero Master said that he joined the community after watching one of these GDQ runs. And I've joined the speedrunning community after watching a GDQ run. Like, I feel like GDQ knows they're influential, but maybe not to what degree.
I agree. I don't think there's any way to grasp it, because I will tell you, so we're on episode 36 here on the podcast. Almost everybody has brought it up at some point that, that may not have been their first entry into speedrunning, but a lot of people, that's what actually made them give it a try, or become a member of the community, whether they're tassing or making a randomizer or making tools or whatever it may be, or runners themselves. It's our biggest event, so it's still the most watched event that we have. So it's not a surprise the influence that it has had on the greater speedrunning community as a whole. So. You mentioned it earlier, and I do want to touch upon it a little bit. You've recently been playing some Command & Conquer Remastered and everything. Any other games that you might consider or have started speedrunning or just enjoy playing at the moment that are that you've been going through?
Oh, do I have to disappoint you with this one?
No, please do. Yes, do it.
So after speedrunning for 6 or 7 years, there is one minor downside to speedrunning, and that is you end up playing a game over and over. Essentially, you're doing what they do at the Olympics. You're attempting to be the best you can be by through competitive action against yourself and against others in the community. But that doesn't leave as much time to try out other things. So Command & Conquer Remastered kind of lies in that. I might think of speedrunning that in the future, but right now I'm just trying to play games I haven't played. Right?
Yes, I'm so glad to hear you say that. That comes up actually a lot too, I should say, in almost every speedrun interview I've done, because it's such a grind. And it's literally, you kind of tune out everything else. And man, if there isn't a better time to be trying out games right now, we have amazing games coming out on a monthly basis right now through over the last couple of years. So it's kind of been brutal to have seen some of those and not played any of them.
Yeah. But most recent game I tried for speedrunning was Doom Eternal.
Oh, cool.
Tried out, what was it? Ultra Nightmare 100%. And
why not?
That's an Everest in itself.
Well, okay, if you don't mind me, Dime, I'm asking a curious question. When you take on a game like Doom Eternal, it's a modern game. I mean, do you immediately go for the hardest settings and push yourself already, even in your first playthrough of a game like that?
In more modern games, yes. Not so much in retro games, because retro games, the highest difficulties, it's cheap. It's up there.
That's a fair point.
But yeah, in more modern games, as far as I feel like they try to be kind of careful with balancing. I'm kind of okay in going in that, and proud of my Doom skills. Got to play on Nightmare.
No, I think that's awesome. It's and that's the great thing about, I think, a lot of modern games is we're actually given a lot of options on how we can enjoy the game. There are times where I've actually gone on the more a little casual side because I want to enjoy the story. I want to take my time. I want to sit back. Speedrunning can be a little stressful. So the fact you can relax, there's many. We're fortunate to be in this time period where we have so many options. Just enjoying any single game. So
yeah,
and good.
The most competitive game being getting hyper focused, and I've been grinding away, trying my best, but I gotta take as many crowns as possible. I've gotten into Fall Guys. I don't know why. But, it's raging.
You don't feel bad about it. I haven't played it yet, and I might start this weekend because I've watched enough of it now where I'm it looks so freaking fun. It's so silly and so. Have you put in some time on Fall Guys this last week, Dime?
Too many hours. I'm not telling exactly how many hours, but too many.
Dog just brought it today. Wow, he called himself out. KingDime just called himself out. That is exactly what happened. Well, I think that's I think it's great a game like that has taken fire because I got to tell you, it seems like it's a pretty good equalizer of people. Because of the randomness and the silliness in it, it seems like there is a skill level to it, but it seems like it equalizes out a lot, quite a bit too.
Yeah,
but that's tough for a modern game. That's tough for a game to do that nowadays. So, Any other games you want to just play casually or take on in the future that you haven't gotten around to play yet?
A Medieval. The New Blood. So it's a modern retro style FPS, but it's really trippy, and I love just the artistic quality that kind of went into that. Did you watch that run?
I didn't. But I think it was the same runner did it at Calithon or ESA, and I was volunteering at the time, and so I saw the whole thing, and I think he had the developer on. There was a whole thing, and it is it's beautiful, and it just looks like capturing the childhood thing again, like perfectly.
Yeah, there's a really big contrast between the beauty of the game and the evil that is Dave Oshry doing commentary. So.
Oh, so true. Oh my gosh, that's true. I'll have to go back and watch the GDQ run of it because it's. I purchased it literally the moment after I saw them play it because I'm like, this is right up my alley. But I haven't had a chance to play, and it looks like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as Cyberpunk, probably 2077 when that one comes out. The
Absolutely.
new Ancient Gods DLC for Doom Eternal. I wanted to play Soma.
Oh,
Got a chance to do that one. The frictional games, like high tech horror experience. Anything else? Anything else? That's kind of on the way. The millions of Steam games in my account that sit there.
this is the joys of getting older. Like I do the same thing. Anytime there's a Steam sale and there's a game I've thought about playing, I usually just pick it up, and then there's literally like 100 games where I haven't played them yet. I feel bad about it.
Yeah. When your account is worth like thousands of dollars, and it's just like this could be $1,000 of like another two grand in my pocket.
Right, exactly. It's so brutal. Totally random, weird question. But do you own any console, or do you play any console games nowadays?
Console games. Ooh, I can show you them right here.
Oh, look at that. He's got them. It's interesting because I think I so associate you with the PC gaming world. I was just, look at that, still in the plastic.
And oh no.
There we go. Yes, Uncharted 4. I've yet to play as well. Love to play.
Uncharted 4 in the plastic.
God of War. Yes, classic. Okay.
God of War.
And
more Uncharted in the plastic.
Awesome. Getting your taste here. Oh, such a good game. I've actually played through that one.
Spider-Man in the plastic.
Well, yes. There we go.
Last of Us.
Wonderful.
In the plastic. So cool. I play more PC games than this one's actually not in the plastic. I played the boss number 2.
Good. I've seen some Bloodborne, but I haven't played it myself yet. Oh yes, I'm playing through that right now. Horizon Zero Dawn. It's awesome.
In the plastic.
In the plastic. So yes, you own a console, and there are console games in your house, but
they end up like the Steam games. In the plastic.
Oh, the joys. The Spider-Man bundle is what made you pull the trigger on a PS4. Oh, on C anyway. Yeah, and I'm apologies if I'm mispronouncing your screen name, but yeah, it's Spider-Man is really fun on PS4. It's a good game. So it's Horizon Zero Dawn. But you know what? Hey, at least they're there. At least they're in the house. At some point, you will get to play them.
Yeah, or they'll be sent to some kid who will enjoy them.
Perfect.
Maybe not The Last of Us to a kid.
Well, I just want to say, KingDime, thank you so much for giving the time and everything. It's been fascinating to hear so much about kind of your journey and also the community that is Doom and Starcraft and kind of these, what I nowadays, I find it kind of funny, crazy and think that they're classic PC games. But because I really, even to the day, I just recently, I think I told you, replayed Doom, the original, just like a year ago. And I got to tell you, it still plays awesome and wonderful. Like, it just still feels good to play the darn game. Like, the controls have held up for over 20 years now.
Yeah, plays well. The bestiary is probably one of the best of all time.
Absolutely.
And as far as the weapon set like that, it doesn't really age poorly. Maybe because they were discovering like what you could do in more advanced 3D level design, that would be like the biggest change, is that there is some odd progression. There's maps like the Chasm where you're running on 2-pixel, walkways. You wouldn't really see that anymore.
Right, exactly. Sprite-based FPSs aged gracefully. That's such a good point because I've recently been diving back into N64 and PlayStation 1 games, and some of those games have not aged as gracefully, like Doom, where it's like you pick it up and it still feels so good to play. Like it just it's as smooth as butter. It's just everything about it is working on all levels.
Yeah. Should I spout some blasphemy? First time I saw Super Mario 64. I thought it was ugly.
Oh, don't add him. No, I just did. But I think, that's one of the things that definitely has not held up is the graphics of SM64. The gameplay is what keeps people coming back in that game, the control of Mario and everything.
Yeah. And that would have been like purely from an individual journey of games. Is I didn't get to see all the ugly 3D evolution on PC. Like it's groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely love that it went from that to what we have today. But like because of playing so many Blizzard RTS games, like RTS ages, like really well from what I've found. But that, and then skipping straight to say Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, is there was no Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong
yes.
64, Bubsy 3D.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we had Author Blues on it. He was talking about Bubsy. Yes, we go, it's such a different world. And I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, it's got to be one of the big reasons I think Doom stands the test of time because of that. And I agree. Shout outs to Doom 64, which just got the official PC release. I haven't yet played it, but I really want to. Have you played through the official port?
Yep. And I speedrun those.
Oh, cool. And enjoyable?
But Zelo's better.
What's that?
Zelo's better. That's why he was running on Thursday.
Well, I appreciate going through all these, and I think this is pretty awesome, getting the chance to revisit some of this. And I've really been a fan. When I watch streams and stuff, I mostly lurk and things like this, but I have been lurking now for a few months, and I really have enjoyed, actually probably closer to a year now for your stream. And watching the games that you play, it makes me relive my childhood a little bit, which is, I think, one of the great things about video games. There's that nostalgia bug. I try to remove it when I'm playing games. I try to get rid of the nostalgia, the rose-colored glasses, but it's just so easy.
Yeah. And contrary to belief, I'm not a mute. I like talking, stuff like that.
No, that's one of the things I loved about your stream was how interactive it was. Like, you're very communicative with the chat. And by the way, I don't know how the hell you do that, because there's 8,000 I was watching you play Command & Conquer recently, and also some of your Starcraft grinding. Like, there's 8,000 things going on. How are you doing all that and still talking to the chat at the same time? I have no idea.
Lots of APM practice. That came from SC too. I don't know. I got so much to think about Starcraft.
It blows my mind. If you have, watch all of KingDime's runs from any GDQ, but the Starcraft one really, and it might have been because I was there seeing it live. There's something about watching these things live, but I was really just kind of blown away, like, seeing that thing. It really, I love the Doom runs, don't get me wrong, but Starcraft just just blew my mind as far as like, I couldn't even figure out how you were doing some of the things you were doing. It just didn't click in my head.
Just glad you enjoyed it. When you put in all the work, and you have like individuals who are coming up and like complimenting the run, that really makes it worth it. Until you see the one YouTube comment and then it goes over. No, that's not true. I don't pay attention to those comments.
But it is tough to ignore them sometimes. I mean, yeah, you see it, it's like, oh man, dang it, I didn't reach that one person out of the tens of thousands that enjoyed the game, enjoyed the run. There's that one.
They didn't like my shirt, and this other guy thinks I look like Bill Gates' son.
So if people are interested at all and they want to see your stream, where can people find you on the interwebs and on the Twitch and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, if you're interested, you can catch me at twitch.tv/KingDime. So that's KingDime, 2 syllables.
I gotta ask, just as selfishly, do you plan on returning at all to Command & Conquer on stream or anything like that?
I've got to do the covert ops missions. There's dinosaur secret mission.
Yeah, I saw some of that. I want to get that. I haven't unlocked that yet, so I'd be interested in going to play some of those.
Yeah. But with CNC, I got distracted by Quake Champions. So doing some multiplayer content.
Another game that has survived the test of time, it seems like, is the Quake.
Yeah. So SGDQ went online that we've been watching, but QuakeCon has their event like pretty close.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
To SGDQ. So QuakeCon put all their stuff online this year too, and had like a little weekend event, and it's just all Quake.
Yeah. Okay. Wasn't familiar with it. QuakeCon, you said?
Yeah, QuakeCon. I believe it's the biggest LAN party in North America. So you go there, and there's just thousands of gamers, and it's really fun.
That's so cool, and that's one of those things just makes my shoulders sink, because it's one of the things I think we're definitely missing is like seeing people and being around people and, you know, getting to do events like that where you, man, I can imagine these thousands of PC gamers all in the same place landing it up. Oh, it's got to be awesome.
That's incredible.
Oh, so cool. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining and sharing a little bit. It's been really interesting, and I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Lat Mackie. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. If you're enjoying the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. All those things go a long way to helping out the podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm on Twitter at LatMackey, or you can also join the LatMackey Discord, where we have a sequence break channel. We talk about guests, we have questions. It's really interactive, really fun. Please feel free to stop on by. Thanks so much. See you in the next one.